Alright guys, I am out at a conservation area in Missouri. We don't get a lot of snow, so this is kind of a little bit of a treat, but it causes more problems than anything because we don't have the equipment to remove it. I won't bore you with all the preliminary stuff. I'm just walking to an area where I know there's a nice chunk of dry wood that I want to cut up and bring back with me. So this is what I'm looking for. Anything that's down and suspended off the ground, not laying on the ground. When it lays on the ground, it's just going to soak up all that moisture and start to rot. Now I cheated a little bit and I found these two the other day, these two smaller ones, and moved them over here to keep them off the ground so I could come back and cut a little bit off at a time. The snow makes it a little more difficult, but you can see bark has fallen off all by itself. That's a good sign right there. Here's another trick that I use for measuring. I can get a 14 and a half inch log in my little stove, but I always have my hand with me and I never have a tape measure. So I always use my hand to measure my lengths. Alright, here's a better view. Not sure what kind of wood this is, but it is definitely a hardwood. You can see how the bark has fallen off, most of it, all on its own. Making sure it's not rotten in the middle is the key. You can see it's not rotten, and there's the chips. Nice and dry. Also, got to break in the new saw. Kind of hard to do this with one hand, but if you listen, hear that high pitch? That's a good sign that it's dry. So here's a good example of some wood that's been laying on the ground. I can break it with my hand and it's just rotten. Large diameter. Well, for our little stoves it's large diameter, but the wood is just rotten, all because it's been laying on the ground. Wouldn't be complete with the taking my buddy with me. Huh? What? So the area that I live in, there is lots of hardwood, and if you look close down in this valley there's a ton of down trees everywhere, and finding hardwood really isn't a problem. Last time I was out here, my son was with me, so we cut twice as much wood in the same amount of time. I'm old and fat now, so you know what they say about wood is it warms you twice. Definitely warms you twice. So what I was saying about my using my hand to do my measurements, I pre-measured it at home against my stove, and I know that going this direction, 2 lengths is about 16 inches. So I go right to the end of my first finger. That's about 14 and a half. That way I can make my mark, and I know exactly that log will fit, and I won't have to cut it twice, because there's nothing worse than trying to cut 1.5 inches off a small log, especially with a saw without a saw buck or some kind of vise to hold it. So that's my little trick to always getting the right size. This one's for you. Ready? I always like to have some smaller stuff that I don't split. Round logs, rounds we call them, will burn longer than split wood. However, the drawback is they take longer to dry. So smaller diameter rounds is what I like to keep. Some of the bigger stuff that you saw me cut, I say bigger, again, based on our stove sizes, I'll probably split some of those until I get a really good coal bed. And those will be like my night burners before I go to bed. I should say I'll leave them in round form when I go to bed.